Hello and welcome to another episode of The Eden's Gem. Hola! If this is the first time that we're meeting, my name is Annette Day, and I am the founder of Beauties of Eden, a ministry that empowers women, equips women, entertain women, educate women to be all that God has called them to be. And every Monday, we try our best to release a new episode through this platform called Eda's Gem, because we know that in order for us to be all of our best, God has put us here on earth to do exploits, and we have to be dug out like the gems that we are. Before we dig into today's episode, I want to give out a shout out to our production team right here, Blessed Dream Production and Eyes Have Not Seen. Without them, let me tell you, these episodes will not come to you. I know you can see behind me our OGs here that the background is a little different, and that's again because of the production team. We're trying out different things. So I hope this comes out well, and I hope that I just do what I do. And then I know it's going to come out well because they will do a perfect job at the editing and all that it takes to get us here. But before we delve in, I want to take this time to wish all women happy Mother's Day. I know you're receiving this episode a day after Mother's Day, but I pray that your Mother's Day went well. I'm actually recording this episode on Mother's Day, believe it or not. And so I've had a great day being loved on and loving on the mother figures in my life. And so I hope you did have a wonderful Mother's Day. I actually preached a sermon today called The Heart of a Mother. And basically, you don't have to have birthed a biological child to be a mother. All women, in my opinion, that take a certain posture to ensure that the next generation are taken care of, whether their own biological or distant mothers. And so I wish all women happy Mother's Day. As you know, this month, May, we are talking about memorable May, making intentional memories that will serve us in the next generation. And I wanted to take a tidbit of the sermon that I had preached earlier today on Mother's Day. There are five women that I highlighted on in my sermon. And in my personal opinion, these women made some bold decisions that made them the mothers that we celebrate today. Ironically, the five women that I spoke on Mother's Day, only two of them, the Bible mentions about them having biological children, and that is Rizpah and Naomi. But other than that, the women that in the Bible that inspire us the most of them, their children are not even mentioned. So the five women that I talked about and the key lessons that I want us to take away from this episode, which obviously is not going to be a 45-minute sermon, but I want to just mention these women again and just reiterate them because I know some of you may not have heard the sermon. And so I'm going to use their stories to probably help us streamline and make intentions based on them to create our own memorable and a legacy for generations to come. The first woman that I spoke about is Rizpah, my one of my all-time favorite women in the Bible. And if you're looking for the story of Rizpah and you're not familiar with the story of Rizpah, it's found in Second Samuel chapter 21, verses 1 through to 14. This is a woman that was a concubine to King Saul. And King Saul, the Bible says, in her thirst to just try and help out Israel, he actually made a mistake by killing the Gibeonites, a group of people that his predecessors, particularly Joshua, had gone in a treaty with them that the Israelites will never go to war with them, meaning the Gibeonites. But Saul, just again being Saul, went and killed a bunch of the Gibeonites. And so when King David had taken over the throne, there was a famine that had come on the land. And David, being the man after God's own heart and a man that does not make decisions on his own but seeks God's face, decides to go see God's face as to why there's famine in the land. And the Lord said it was because Saul had gone in and killed some of the Gibeonites. And so that's why he, the Lord, that is a God of vengeance for his people. But because there was a treaty that had been signed, a covenant that Israel had gone in with the Gibeonites, the Lord had allowed the famine to come in. And so David went and inquired of the Gibeonites and asked them, what can we do to pacify you so that this famine that the Lord has allowed into the land would go? And they said they want 7 men from the lineage of Saul. And so Saul's daughter, Adriel, had 5 of her children killed alongside this Rizpah, who was a concubine of Saul. Her 2 children were killed. The king spared Mephibosheth, who was a grandson of Saul and a son of Jonathan, because again, David understood the power of covenant. And because he had had a covenant with Jonathan that they will always have each other's back, he decided to spare the life of Mephibosheth, but they had to sacrifice these 7 boys. And Rizpah, even though she could not stop the death of these 7 men, after their death and they were hung there for everybody to see, Rizpah took a sackcloth, and the Bible says that she went and put herself on the rock. And for about a period of 3 months, from barley season to wheat season, she would try to drive the vultures away and anything that would try to come and eat the flesh, the carcasses of these young men, she will drive them away. The lesson that I makes Rizpah's story so memorable for me, that I look at her to create a memorable legacy for my own life, is that this woman, even when it seemed like all is lost, she did not give up. She did not allow what seemed like it's a waste anyway. She stood her ground, and because of that, word went to David. And David, when she had heard what Rizpah was doing, asked that the bodies of these young men will be taken down from being hung, and then along with their bones, the corpse, and that of Saul and Jonathan, they were given a proper burial. And Rizpah inspires me. She's one of my all-time favorite, like I said, because this is a woman that was relentless. This is a woman that ensured that justice, even though she couldn't prevent their death, but the soul of Israel was heard. The next woman along that line that I spoke about was Naomi. Naomi, one of the things that I want us to take away that makes Naomi's story so memorable is that even though she was grieving, even though she had a loss of her own biological children, she was able to mentor her daughter-in-law, who was not her biological child, who happens to be Ruth. And the lesson that I take from her, if I'm going to create a life of legacy and memory, is that yes, we're all going to go through grief and we're all going to go through our own losses in life. But one of the things that I said to the congregation today is that you don't have to wait to heal to help others. And I want to say that all of us have had some level of trauma, some more intense than others. And oftentimes we allow that trauma to make us kind of decapitate us, for lack of a better word. And because we're dealing with our own grief, we cannot see a Ruth to be able to help them along the way. And so this is the part of Naomi that I want you to see, that even though she herself hadn't been healed fully, she was able to help others. So in essence, as we are creating memories, especially if you're in a season of loss, a season where you feel like you can't even lift your head up, it's time to become a Naomi. And we read of Naomi because she was able, in her own time of grief, be able to mentor a young woman. The next woman I talked about is who it happens to be a favorite of most people is Deborah. Deborah, Deborah, Deborah. Deborah the prophetess, Deborah the judge, Deborah the worshiper. The entire chapter of Judges 5 is about Deborah worshiping, writing a song with Barak after they had come back from war. But Judges 5:7, in the midst of that song, this is what she said, especially if you read it from the NIV. She said, when village life had ceased, I, Deborah, arose a mother. I, Deborah, arose a mother. The reason why we read about Deborah and a lot of women are inspired by Deborah is not so because she was a judge, maybe. It's not because she had the title of a prophetess, maybe, but it's because her story is in there because she rose up as a mother whose heart was aching for the life that was seizing on the streets of Israel. Are you and I women that look beyond our biology, women that look beyond the nurturing or anything that has come as life from our body? But are we able to rise up? Because Deborah's story is written, and Deborah inspires us because she took the posture of a mother, even though the Bible doesn't name her children. The fourth woman I talked about, so Naomi's story is the entire book of Ruth. Deborah's story is in Judges chapters 4 and 5. The next woman, which is the fourth woman that I want to highlight on, her story is found in Acts chapter 9, verses 36 to 41. And that is Dorcas. Oh, Dorcas, or some people call it Tabitha. This is a woman that mothered through service. Again, she is not, the Bible does not mention anything about her biological children, but these women created memories because they stood in the gap. And Dorcas showed compassion and mothered through a talent that she had for sewing blankets, for sewing coats for orphans and widows. And so a day came when Dorcas had died, and the widows brought everything that she had created, and they heard that Peter was in town. And so they called for Peter to come and pray as they were weeping and showing all the beautiful tunics and the coats and maybe the blankets that Dorcas had created. And looking at the impact of this woman in that community, it inspired Peter to pray, and she came back to life. And I was sharing with the congregation that sometimes it feels like maybe we're not dead in a physical death, but have you ever been in a place? I have been multiple times. Have you ever been in a place where you feel so sorrowful, you feel so lethargic, you just feel like you just want to give up? But there may be somebody that you smile, somebody that maybe you pay their school fees or their tuition, somebody that you called and encouraged at some point, somebody that you may have given a little cup of water, like Jesus talked about, or maybe you gave them your 2 fish and your 5 loaves. And someday when you're like at your lowest of low, they call, they text, they send a message and remind you what a blessing you were to them in their time of need. To me, that's like a Dorcas that is dead, where the deeds that you do, that person comes and say thank you, and all of a sudden it lifts you up and it boosts you up. These are memories that we have to be intentional in cultivating. And then the last of the 5 that I didn't really get to go in detail is Esther. And currently I'm on an Esther challenge. And Esther, oh my, you see, as I'm reading about the story of Esther again, I'm seeing that when the Bible says that young virgins were brought into the palace of King Xerxes in the citadel of Susa, that these were not 40-year-olds, these were not 50-year-olds, these were not 30-year-olds. Matter of fact, they probably were not 28-year-olds. These are late teens to early 20s, maybe, because at that time, that's when women were given up in marriage. And this young woman, who probably hadn't even had a chance to get pregnant yet, let alone have a baby, the shoulders of her the needs of her people are falling on her shoulders. And she arose and said, if I perish, I perish. I mean, that to me is a mighty young woman who lives selflessly compared to our generation where there's entitlement and that self-centeredness. And so in the next 10 years, 5 years, are you and I making bold steps, making decisions that is beyond ourselves, like that of Rispa, beyond our own biological children? If you talk about Rispa, it was her two children out of the seven. And one woman had five children, but we don't hear her story in there. Rispa did not let the death of her children make her so tired, so broken that she was not just stuck in bed. She decided she was going to fight, but she was going to fight from a place of intercession. And that's exactly what Esther did as well, where she knew that she could not approach the king on her own, meaning the earthly king. She decided to go to the King of Kings, and she took a sackcloth. And every version of the Bible that I've read, it doesn't say, and she found a rock. It says, and then Rizpah found and put the sackcloth on the rock. There's a difference between a rock, which means any ordinary rock that she found, and the rock. And to me, Jesus is concealed so beautifully in this story, yet revealed through the Rhema word, because the only rock of ages and the rock is Jesus. And so symbolically, without Rizpah knowing, she was going at the rock of ages, to say, I know I couldn't have saved the life of my children, but at least let them have a decent burial. And Esther, as young as she was, said, I know that I may not be able to have go to war to save my people with weapons, but I know a weapon that is above every other weapon, and that is fasting and prayer. And a young, maybe 18, maybe 16, maybe 20, 23-year-old, 25-year-old decided, I'm going to fast for 3 days. I'm going to rally up people to fast. And because of these decisions that these women make, they have made memories that we aspire for them. We aspire to be like them. What is going to be your story? Which one of them is your favorite? Which one of them is going to be the role model for you to live and make decisions this memorable May, to be able to say in generations to come, to say, I knew of a woman, her name is so and so, and she took a stand in the year 2025. And because of that, I am here. Because of that, I, a Ruth, was able to meet my Boaz. Because of her, I was able to save the next generation from alcoholism, from prostitution, from financial illiteracy, whatever it is that we want to go on. Let this May be a month where we're strategic to create lasting and impactful memories for generations yet unborn and for the nations at large. God bless you, and I will see you in the next episode.